I'll now take the sediment for the Planning Local Review Body by roll call. Councillors Alec Allison and Jerry Convery are present. Councillor Mary Donnelly. So I now see Councillor Donnelly's names on the screen, so Councillor Donnelly is present. Councillor Ferguson Miller. Councillor Miller's name's now on screen. Councillor Mark Horsham is also present. The following members, Councillors Leslie MacDonald, Richard Nelson, Norman Ray are also present. I have apologies from Councillor Salamati. Also apologies from Councillor Graham Scott, and Councillor Maureen Devlin is attending as a substitute. Thank you, and I'll now pass you back to the Chair for today's business.
Thank you, Stuart. The item before us today is a notice of review for services on behalf of Mr Chowdhury. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review the Planning Officer's determination to review an application for planning permission for the erection of 2 dwelling houses, each with an attached garage and raised decking to the rear, as well as the formation of a vehicle access at land 120 metres north-east of 55 Bothwell Road, Hamilton. The review documents have raised 2 preliminary matters, therefore I would like to ask the legal advisor to comment on these before we proceed with the item itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The first preliminary matter to cover is to advise members that accompanying the further representations from Hamilton Park South Action Group, which begins at page 391 of your papers, were a number of representations from parties who had not previously objected to the planning application or whose signatories were unidentifiable. These representations are not included in your papers today, and the Hamilton Park South Action Group have been advised of this. In terms of the Town and Country Planning, Schemes of Delegation and Local Review Procedures, Scotland Regulations 2013, only an interested party may make representations in respect of a review. Regulation 2 of these regulations defines an interested party as any authority or person consulted by the Planning Authority and any other person from whom the Planning Authority received representations to the original application. Where an individual does not make a representation to the original application, there is no mechanism in terms of the regulations for them to take part in any further review of that application. Consequently, those submissions do not form part of your papers today and cannot be taken into account in the determination of the review. In terms of the next preliminary matter, this relates to the suggestion that a new matter, which was not before the original decision maker, has been raised by the applicant's notice of review. In this regard, I would refer members to the statement of observations from the planning officer on the applicant's notice of review, which starts at page 379 of your papers. In particular, I would refer members to section 3, paragraph 3.6, which is on page 385 of members, where it reads, "Indeed, the suggestion for financial investment and a related section 75 agreement is new information and was not made available prior to the determination of application P/22/0029. The relevance of this aspect is therefore questionable in terms of this appeal. The Planning Officer, therefore, has raised concerns that the proposal to fund a woodland management plan and biodiversity project through a Section 75 agreement could be considered a new matter. As members will be aware, Section 43B of the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act 1997 Section 43B of the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act 1997 prohibits the raising in a review of new matters that were not before the original decision maker, unless such information could not have been raised before or there are exceptional circumstances which prevented it from being raised before. What constitutes a new matter isn't defined in the Act or accompanying regulations. However, Scottish Government Guidance Notes to Reporters, Guidance Note 16, states that reporters should interpret a new matter as a new issue or topic that was not before the Planning Authority. Okay, well, let's start speaking now. Okay, perhaps it would be better if I start from the beginning of the issue of the new matter, the second preliminary matter. Thank you, Chair. Okay, the second preliminary matter relates to the suggestion that a new matter, which is not before the original decision maker, has been read by the applicant's notice of review. This is raised by the planning officer. If I just refer members again to page 385 of the notice of review, page 385 of their documents, where the planning officer states, indeed the suggestion for financial investment and a related section 75 agreement is new information and was not made available prior to the determination of application P/22/0029. The relevance of this aspect is therefore questionable in terms of this appeal. Consequently, the planning officer has therefore raised the issue that a new matter has been raised, and the new matter is the funding of the Woodland Management Plan and Biodiversity Project through a Section 75 agreement. As members will be aware, the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act 1997 prohibits the raising in a review of new matters that were not before the original decision maker, unless such information could not have been raised before or there are exceptional circumstances which prevented it from being raised before. Unfortunately, what constitutes a new matter is not defined in the Act. However, the Scottish Government has issued guidance to reporters for the Department of Planning and Environmental Appeal, where they have advised that reporters should interpret a new matter as a new issue or topic that was not before the Planning Authority. It is likely that the same approach should apply to local review bodies. Consequently, a new matter would appear to be more than just new documents or information. The advice from the Scottish Government implies that if the issue or topic to which the information relates was before the original decision maker, it is still admissible. The applicant is of the view that the future management of the remaining woodland was a matter or topic that was before the original decision maker. Consequently, the suggestion of a Section 75 agreement to control and implement a woodland management plan and diversity works is not a new matter, but simply new information pertaining to an existing matter. The first issue for members to determine today is therefore whether or not to take into account the provision of the woodland management plan and biodiversity strategy and associated offer of funding. Members should be advised that if members do consider this constitutes a new matter, that the applicant must be given the opportunity to advise why this new matter was not raised before, and therefore we would not be able to determine the review today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Monica. Just before I go back to the original item for decision this morning, I apologise, I missed the declarations of interest at the beginning, so for the matter of the minutes, can I just ask if there's any declaration of interest before we carry on with the business? I assume there's none. Minutes of the Planning Local Review Body on the 20th of June. Item 2, I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Just prior to proceeding any further, for the PLRB has to consider and decide whether or not we are happy to take into account the applicant's offer to enter into a legal agreement to secure the proposed woodland management and diversity works. Having heard the advice from the legal advisor, it is my view that even though the offer of a legal agreement and provision of woodland management plan is new information, the impact and future management of the existing woodland is a matter that was before the original decision marker. In addition, the Planning Authority has responded to this proposal and the Planning Authority's response to the Notice of Review. Therefore, this new information can be taken into account in the PLRB's determination today, or the offer of a legal agreement and provision of woodland management plan is a new matter that was not before the original decision maker. Therefore, we need to request further information from the applicant as to why this information was not raised before and cannot proceed to determine the application further today. Do you all agree? Anybody online disagree? Thank you. Monica?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to confirm then that the PLRB are taking the decision that this is not a new matter and therefore can proceed today.
Yes, I would take that as the first agreement, and we will proceed further. Thank you. The Planning Advisor will now describe the background to this request for a review to the members. I'll pass you over to James. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review the Planning Officer's determination to refuse an application for planning permission for the erection of 2 dwelling houses, each with an attached garage, raised decking to the rear, as well as the formation of a vehicular access at land 120 metres north-east of 55 Bodwell Road, Hamilton. As part of the application process, the design of the houses were amended to remove the studio flat elements, and the orientation of the dwellings were altered to reduce tree loss. The proposed dwellings would be 2 stories in height and would have integral garages as well as 9 external parking spaces shared between them. The application site is located within an area of woodland which runs alongside Bodwell Road's eastern edge. This woodland is the subject of a tree preservation order, reference HM35. The site is located within the urban area as designated within the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2. The part of the site which would be used to form the access to the proposed dwellings from Bodwell Road is also designated as Green Network within the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2. In terms of consultations, there were 7 requested. Roads Development Management and Environmental Services had no objections to the proposals subject to conditions. Scottish Water had no objections to the proposals, but noted that there is a foul sewer within the site boundary that would require a 3-metre development buffer. Roads Flood Risk Management stated that due to lack of information in relation to drainage, they would defer their response until further information was received. The applicant was made aware of this request, but as yet no further information has been received. Scottish Forestry noted that the application site was covered by a tree protection order and also on the National Forestry Inventory. They also note that the TPO places the responsibility for decisions relating to the management and retention of the woodland to the Council as Planning Authority. As part of this responsibility, and given the proposals would result in the permanent loss of 16% of the woodland, they also advise that the Scottish Government's control of woodland removal policy should be taken into consideration as part of any planning assessment. The Council's Arboricultural Services object to the proposals, stating that the construction of the driveway and access road does not accord with best practice and would be detrimental to retained trees. The development would be detrimental to the setting of the tree preservation order and amenity of the area. The proposed development will open the woodland to windthrow. The proposed development will put the remaining trees under threat from removal due to being considered overbearing and perceived as a potential risk by future landowners, particularly in high winds. The juxtaposition of the trees and proposed development is unacceptable, and the trees will be under threat from removal by future owners due to light obstruction and minor season nuisance. The proposal will result in a detrimental removal of 16% of the woodland. The Council has agreed to increase tree cover in its urbanised areas to 20% by 2032 as part of the Clyde Climate Forest. This proposal does not support the Council's action and that the proposals will have an adverse impact on a valued woodland and individual trees of high biodiversity and amenity value. The Council's Biodiversity Officer objected to the proposals, noting that the site and larger woodland area has been identified as being of local biodiversity interest and is currently a potential local nature conservation site, and that the proposals would lead to a permanent net loss of biodiversity. As noted in the agenda papers, the planning application received 44 letters of objection and 4 letters of support. A petition against the proposals was also received. The concerns related to loss of woodland and impact on the environment, the designation of the site as green network, road safety, impact on privacy and concerns of overlooking, noise, air and light pollution, lack of garden ground, access arrangements, ownership, impact on protected species and flood risk. So in assessing this local review, the local review body are respectfully requested to consider the following relevant policies of the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, which are Policy 3, General Urban Areas and Settlements, which states that residential developments on appropriate sites will generally be acceptable. Particular consideration will be given to likely impacts on the amenity of the area. Developments which would be detrimental to the amenity of residents in the wider community or to the character of the surrounding area will not be permitted. Policy 5, Development Management and Placemaking. This policy states, in order to ensure development takes account of the principles of sustainable development, all proposals require to be well designed and integrated with the local area. Proposals should have no unacceptable significant adverse impacts on the local community and the environment. Policy 13, Green Network and Green Space, which states that, where applicable, development proposals should safeguard the green network as identified on the proposals map and identify opportunities for enhancement and or extension which can contribute to the following: placemaking, mitigating greenhouse gases and adapting to the impacts of climate change, supporting biodiversity, enhancing health and quality of life, providing water management including flood storage and buffer strips, development of blue-green networks using existing watercourses, improving air quality, providing areas for leisure activity, providing areas for allotments and community growing areas, and promoting active travel. Policy DM1, New Development Design, which states that new development will require to promote quality and sustainability in its design and layout and should enhance or make a positive contribution to the character and appearance of the urban or rural environment in which it is located. Policy NHE 13, Forestry and Woodland, which states that development proposals should seek to manage, protect and enhance existing ancient semi-natural woodland, other woodlands, hedgerows and individual trees. Proposals likely to impact on woodlands, hedgerows or individual trees should be accompanied by a full tree survey and written justification for any losses. Proposals should accord with the Council's tree strategy. In all cases involving the proposed removal of existing woodland, the acceptability of woodland removal and requirement for compensatory planting will be assessed against the criteria set out in the Scottish Government's policy on control of woodland removal. Removal for development purposes will only be permitted where it would achieve significant and clearly defined public benefits. Policy NHE 14, Tree Preservation Orders, which states that trees and woodlands that are considered to be of significance will be protected from inappropriate development through the enforcement of existing tree preservation orders. Any development likely to affect existing protected trees should be accompanied by a full tree survey with written justification for any losses. And finally, Policy NHE 20, Biodiversity, which states that in order to further the conservation of biodiversity, development proposals should demonstrate that they have no significant adverse impact on biodiversity, including cumulative impacts. Development proposals likely to lead to significant loss of biodiversity will only be supported if adequate mitigation and offsetting measures are agreed with the Council. Development proposals should consider opportunities to contribute positively to biodiversity, conservation and enhancement, proportionate to the scale and nature of the proposal. It is these policies that provide the development plan basis for considering the application. Finally, Chair, the review body should note that the appellant considers a site visit and a hearing as being beneficial to the review body. Thank you.
Thank you, James. The next point for the PLRB to consider and decide is how to proceed with this review. The applicant has indicated that a site inspection and hearing would be of assistance to the review body. Taking into account of what is in our papers today, we have to decide if they do in fact contain sufficient information for us to determine the review today, or if we need any more written information, a hearing or a site visit. Personally, I think all the information that we have, plus the detailed photographs we have of the site, does provide us with all we need for us to consider this review today, without either a site visit or a hearing or further written submissions. Any comments? Everybody agree? Nobody online. No. Do the members therefore agree that we can proceed with without a site visit, hearing or additional information? If everybody's agreed? Agreed. Then proceed to review, and I'll open up for any comments for the review. Anyone have any comments? I'll summarise the points. Councillor Allison. Councillor Allison.
Yeah.
That's you. Live?
Sorry, did it take into account at all that these houses will be overlooking the racecourse? Is that a material consideration?
Oh. I'll pass over to James.
Thank you, Chair. The application was fully assessed in terms of the dwelling houses' impact within the local area, not just in terms of other neighbouring properties such as the school and the racecourse, but also there are residential developments existing next to it. So that was taken into account as part of the assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allison. Any other further comments? I'll summarise the points. The application is for planning permission for the erection of 2 dwelling houses, each with an attached garage and raised decking to the rear, as well as for formation of vehicle access and land 120 metres north east of 55 Bothwell Road, Hamilton. The adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2 identifies the site as being within the designated urban area and partly within the green network. The site is also within an area designated by a tree protection order. If we consider that there is no valid policy justification to support the proposed dwelling houses at this location and it would not accord with policies 3, 5, 13, NHE 13 and NHE 20 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, permission can be refused. Or, if we consider that there is adequate justification for the location of the proposed dwelling houses, we can grant planning consent subject to conditions. Our options here today are uphold or reverse or vary the planning determination. I invite for MD to put any motions. Are members minded to uphold the officer's decision to refuse planning permission? Agreed. Anybody otherwise minded? Nobody online. Therefore, the decision of the PLRB is to refuse planning permission as we are satisfied of the officer's recommendations. And that the proposed development would be contrary to 3, 5, 13, NHE 13 and NHE 20 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2. The next stage is that a written decision notice will be issued by the PLRB and this should be issued within 28 days. Thank you for your attendance this morning. Have a safe day. Thank you.